On the old highway into town, coming from the north, sits an immense tree. It's a genuine behemoth, an ancient eucalypt several meters wide that survived the march of progress by pure chance, having the good fortune to have sprouted something like 50 centimeters outside the mandatory clearway off the side of the road. This near immovable monument to a time before humans and roads is known locally as the Dying Tree. If you ever come out this way and you bother to look closely at the tree, you will notice it bears a horrible scar. The sole remaining reminder of an awful event many years ago. My parents were children at the time, but they remember the night it happened as vividly as they do the birth of their children. Tragedy always strikes deeper in a small town, I suppose. It was a magic summer's day, and a bunch of local kids had spent it partying out at the river, a rather ambitious name for the larger of the small creeks that run close to the town. Most of them had left as the sun began its slow march towards the night, but there are always a few who want to kick on, and it was near midnight when the last handful decided to call it a day. They hit the trifecta, these poor kids. They were drunk, they were stoned, and they were speeding. The Dying Tree is just off the back of a slight bend as you come back into town, and in their heavily impaired state, whoever was driving apparently just didn't see it. No one knows exactly how fast they were going when they slammed into the base of the tree. This was the 1970s. There was no real crash investigation unit or anything like that. But one of the cops who attended the scene said that when he arrived, there was a substance that looked like strawberry thick shake dripping from the unrecognizable mess that had once been a car. I don't know how true that anecdote is, but I do know that there were 5 kids in that car, and they never extracted enough recognizable pieces to complete a single body. Obviously, the crash hit the town hard, because of both its tragedy and its brutality. 5 young lives had been abruptly cut off. 5 families had been shattered. And in a town of less than 500 people, that's something that touches everyone. But eventually, people healed. People moved away, moved on or passed on. And over the years, that horrible night bred myths and legends. There are many people who will tell you of driving that road late at night and being passed by searingly bright headlights speeding past them. Once the light passes, however, it simply winks out of existence. Others speak of featureless dark figures in the middle of the road, forcing them to a stop, before turning and disappearing entirely behind the tree. And there is a story that if you go to the tree at midnight on the anniversary of the crash, put your hands against the trunk and speak the names of all 5 victims, their spirits will appear. It's become a rite of passage of sorts for teenagers in my town. Invariably, nothing happens. Or kids will hear a rustling in the bush or the screech of an owl and take that as the appearance of a ghost. But they never realize that they're going on the wrong night. You see, somewhere along the line, someone added to the legend. They said that the crash happened on the summer solstice, maybe in an effort to make the whole thing sound more mystical or something. Truth is, The crash happened a week or so earlier, around the middle of December. These days, there aren't many original families left, so maybe that's why the solstice myth has taken hold. The graves themselves are old and worn now, and those of us who know are happy to leave it that way. Some out of respect, and some because we've seen what comes to the tree when you call for it. I had just turned 18 when we went out to the tree. There were only 4 of us, the only 4 who knew the real anniversary from our year at school. At the time, we kept it secret because we wanted to be the only ones to actually experience something. If there was indeed anything to experience. I think we all thought it was pretty silly at the time. But apart from the driver, we all needed a bit of the old Dutch courage before we headed out. We arrived at the tree at 11:51 p.m. The bush eerily silent as we piled out of the old station wagon. Tessa, easily the most timid of the 4, insisted on having another pull from the Smirnoff bottle before we even approached the tree. But soon enough, we were all standing there like a pack of idiots, touching the tree and waiting for the last few minutes to tick by. No one spoke. Despite our earlier skepticism, we were all tense as the hour approached. As our watches all ticked over to 12 o'clock, Katie spoke the 5 names into the thick, still night air. And absolutely nothing happened. We all looked at each other for a moment, unsure what to do. Even when Tessa spoke up, I think we all thought she was just letting her imagination get the best of her. Did you hear that? Katie rolled her eyes lightheartedly, until she saw that Aaron had cocked his head and frowned. I heard it, I think. Listen. We all strained, and sure enough, we heard the faintest of sounds coming from the bush further up the road. It was kind of like a wet scraping noise. Not something I was used to hearing out in the bush, but not loud or unusual enough to make me cry ghost either. I was about to write it off when it was joined by something else. A low, throaty, strangled sob. We all froze. 4 sets of wide eyes staring simultaneously into each other in the cloak of darkness that surrounded us. As we held our breath, there came the unmistakable sound of someone or something shuffling heavily through the undergrowth. As one, we all pulled our hands away from the tree like we'd been shocked, as though breaking the contact would put an end to whatever spell we had cast. But the shuffling sound continued, punctuated by another choked-off sob. We stood there, transfixed for what felt like hours, as whoever or whatever was making the noises came steadily towards us. Finally, a large shape materialized at the tree line, just at the edge of the light from our headlights. Tessa bolted first, silently turning and running up the road. Aaron swore and followed her, and Katie broke ranks almost as soon as he did. None of them went to the car. In their fear, they just sprinted straight past it and back up the shoulder of the near derelict highway towards town. I'd like to pretend I stayed because I was brave, because I wanted to see what had terrified us so. In reality, I was completely rooted to the spot, too terrified to move. I was a mouse, caught in the act of traversing a dark kitchen when the lights suddenly flicked on, leaving my brain too shocked to formulate a plan. All I could do was watch as the figure stepped out into the beam of the headlights. For a moment, my mind could not comprehend the being that stood in front of me. It was big, bigger than any man, and strangely misshapen. I noticed that it appeared to have no skin, or else was slick with free-flowing blood that dripped to the ground and pooled at its feet. There was no head, but several bloodied eyes looked out at me from what would have been the top of the sternum had it been assembled like a human being. And as it saw me, it made a guttural, choked-off cry and began shambling in my direction. At some point, between seeing this horrific thing come out of the bush and those first faltering steps, I'm not ashamed to say, I almost voided my bladder. Yet, I still could not move, could not tear my eyes away. My heart was pounding so hard that I felt dizzy, and the sight of the lights glistening of the creature's raw, exposed muscle turned my stomach. It continued towards me, its gait slow and uncertain, and it dawned on me that the thing was sobbing freely now. A pang of pity cut through the sheer terror that I was feeling. But as it got closer, it reached a horrible appendage towards me, and my brain finally snapped into action, and I ran. I ran and I ran and I ran, past the car and headlong into the night, followed by a tortured howl that sounded desperate and pleading more than anything else. I apparently ran straight past my friends without even noticing them, finally stopping at the bridge into town some 5 kilometers away, where I broke down in distraught hysterics. It took the others days before they worked up the courage to talk about that night. But I went back with my brother the next morning to retrieve Aaron's car. I hadn't slept at all. Not from fear, honestly, but because something about the whole experience had been bugging me. When I returned there was no sign that anything had happened. The pools of blood, small though they had been, were entirely gone. So we jumped the now flat battery in the station wagon and we headed back home. This was more than a few years ago now. I've never told the others exactly what I saw, and when we finally spoke about it, I simply told them I bolted when the figure made a move and never got a good look. Every year since, though, I go back to that tree before the sun sets on that terrible day, and I leave a single white rose at the base of the tree. And every morning, it's gone. See, I have no idea what I saw that night. But the thing that kept me awake, the most horrible thing about it all, was the way that entity sobbed. The way it cried out when I ran. A cry laced with pain and heartache, and not a single hint of malice. As much as I don't want to believe it, as much as I want to believe that we encountered some sort of demon or other entity drawn to the tree. I can't help but think we really did summon the tortured essence of those poor kids. That they're joined in death, stuck together for all time in the moment that their lives were so brutally cut off, begging for it all to just end. I'm not religious, but I pray with every fibre of my being that I'm wrong. I've looked into ways of freeing them to no avail, and I'm not brave enough to call out for them again. I'm expecting a child of my own now, and I have no idea what might happen. If I never find a way to free them, then maybe, one day, when my own life is nearing an end, I'll go back to that tree one last time. At the very least, maybe they won't have to be so alone